Hello everyone, this is Monica from Needle and Paper and welcome to my channel. Today I wanted to bring you another version of this card that I make for my blog entry for Studio Katia. It will be this one here in pink. It's basically using the same ombre technique in monochromatic, but obviously in different color. I used a different stamp set. I used the Sunshine of Hope from Studio Katia, and this is a barely there pink cardstock. I use a stamping platform, and this is very important for this technique. And then I just pull out some inks, and I ended up using 3 of them in the pink ones. And my blender brush from Studio Katia. I also had my stamping mat, and I pull out a piece of paper just to clean up the brush as I was using different inks. So I just went ahead and placed my cardstock on the stamping platform, and then just the stamp, the actual stamp, and then close the lid. And as you know, these stamping platforms are very handy for repositioning or for re-stamping, because then you don't have to guess. And this is actually very important, particularly in this video, because you're gonna see what happened. So I'm going to use clear, my just watermark. This is from Wow Stamping, and I added a generous amount of anti-static powder. And I went ahead and stamped. And when I added the white embossing powder, that's what I wanted to use in this case. And you're not gonna see it as much because the cardstock is pink and the embossing powder is white, but I didn't have a good impression, and I knew that when I lifted the lid of the stamping platform. I knew right away that that was going to happen, but I still went ahead and heat set it, and I decided to just leave it like that. And since my stamp was already or still in the exact same position, I thought I'm just gonna see. Here I was thinking I'm going to restamp, but then I thought no, I'm just gonna leave it there. I'm just gonna go ahead with my inking. What I didn't want is my white lines from the embossing lines to become pink, but there is a trick. You can actually wipe off the excess color and it will come out of the embossing lines. So I started to work with the lightest shade of ink, and this is Spun Sugar, Distress Ink Spun Sugar. And you can see a little, but not much. And you would have seen more if I had a good impression the first time. But you're gonna notice in the third layer that you will be able to see more of the stem of a flower here, of the sunflower. This is the second layer, and it's picked raspberries. And I hope you could see here now, you can tell that the leaf is showing a little bit and a little bit of a stem is showing. And then the third color I use is festive berries, and that's the third layer, and it's a little bit more orangey than the pinks. So I think it looks to me that it has a little bit more orange. But when I blended it in all again, it does give the effect, and that part is the narrowest part of a flower, so it doesn't really look bad. So I added a second layer off camera, and then I went ahead and added another. This time it has to be very generous amount of embossing powder, because now you have the ink. So number one, you have to let the ink dry. You can use your embossing tools, your heating tool for that, or just air dry. And you still have to add a lot of embossing anti-static powder, because you don't want any of the ink on the outside. Although we are going to die cut this. In any case, just to be sure, you want to add your anti-static powder. I want to keep saying embossing powder, but it's anti-static powder. So I went ahead again and stamped the image on the cardstock, on the panel, and I just try to go as hard as I can, but if I go really hard, I shake all the camera. And this time I got a good impression, so I went ahead and added my white embossing powder, shaked off the excess. I always do that, and put my embossing powder again in the container and heat set it. This technique is something that you can use with pretty much any stamp, and it is easy. It really is easy, and one of the reasons I wanted to recreate it and just with different color palette was to show that a card doesn't have to be too complicated or take tons of times in order to be pretty and presentable and to get the attention. The former one, the first one I made, I think if you have a larger stamp is better, but as you will see with this one, it still looks nice, and this is just a smaller image. I had my matching die from Studio Katia from the same stamp set. Again, it's Sunshine of Hope, and I just went ahead and ran it through my die cutting machine. And I thought to die cut several layers of this, but I just decided to add, I'll let you later see, foam tape. So for the base layer, I went with a cardstock that matches the darkest shade of the ink that I use. And even though we die cut this, we still end up with that sort of white edge around after the embossing lines, right? And so to make this more like, to give this more like a pop-up effect, I went with my alcohol marker and color that edge with a color that sort of matches the cardstock. Now, if you've seen or watched videos or heard people who are experts in Copic or any color alcohol ink markers, they'll tell you not to use it with embossing lines. And I will suggest you to follow that advice. I am not an expert and I don't color with Copics or alcohol markers that much. So I dared this time, but nothing happened to my markers. So I glue my panel, the pink panel that I trimmed just slightly smaller than an A2 card. I actually wanted the white edge around, and glue it using liquid glue. And the reason why I like liquid glue is that if it's not super straight, you can sort of wiggle it a bit and adjust the panel. And this mat that I pointed has the shape of A2 card in portrait and landscape, so that helps. And to the center of this, not to the center, I actually added it to the a little bit to the side, the image. But before, I added a lot of foam tape. And it's this foam tape. It also is from Studio Katia, and it comes pre-cut in those strips that you're seeing there. So I didn't have to do. I just have to cut the length, of course, that you need, but they are in different sort of widths. So that's one of the widths, and I think I think I taped that. In a little bit, you'll see that I grabbed, there it is, a narrower or a thinner strip that I use for the stem. And these are very, very handy when you're making shaker cards. If you like the bulky ones, like to make a lot of like the thicker shaker embellishments, these strips come in very handy. So I added my image. Obviously, I peel off the backing of the foam tape, and then I added it to the side. I was debating, oh, maybe it should go on the front, no, maybe it should go on the side, and I'm glad I put it on the side because you'll see what happens next. And I decided to leave it on the recorder for you to see that sometimes we change our minds, and sometimes we think that the project is not quite, or something is missing, and this is exactly what happened. I had a few strips of the stamp set High, I believe it is, from Studio Katia as well, and I decided to add one in just around the leaves. The leaves had a little bit of marking that I wasn't too happy, and that's the perfect way to hide those sort of errors or mistakes. Same embellishments. Embellishments is the best way to hide those little mishaps. And I always like to add embellishments. These are pearls, iridescent pearls from Studio Katia. And I'm adding some here and there in the main panel and also on the actual flower. I was having a little bit of trouble there with the glue. It was giving me these huge drops because I left it upside down. But at the end it was fine. So once I added all my embellishments, I thought the card was too bare. I thought it was missing something. If you see the original card here, the image, because it's larger, it doesn't really need much, but this one did. So I experimented and I decided to leave it on the video for you to see that we do change our minds and make mistakes, or not mistakes, but we make edits, I guess, along the way. So I decided to stamp the same image on the one corner, on that little corner, again using white embossing powder, and I use an anti-static powder, as you saw that, and that was very important because this was a one chance one time chance that I had to get this right. This could have gone well or could have gone really bad, but it didn't. So the stamped image the first time was good, and I didn't have to repeat it. That would have not gone well anyway. I probably wouldn't have tried. And then with that very hot heating tool, I just went and basically touched and lifted, just to avoid sort of remelting the previous embossing powder and to prevent my cardstock to warp. And then the excess of the anti-static powder, I waited a little bit until it dried, and then I eliminated it with a dryer sheets, those ones from the dryer machine. They work really well to remove glitter and this powder as well. Then when I was doing that, I accidentally removed one of the embellishments, and nothing to worry about. I just went and added a larger pearl, not the small one that was there, but just a bigger one, and then I added one on the new sunflower, I guess. And this is it, guys. What do you think? It's very simple, very easy, but it has a little bit of impact. I hope you feel inspired by it. Thank you for visiting my channel and for watching, and see you next time. This is Monica from Needle and Paper. Bye.